Holst is able to really paint pictures unlike, I mean, better than most composers.
And here we are in Western classical music, and Mussorgsky's done a very atmospheric depiction of the Moscow River. And
Yes,
the
the
twain,
prelude
the
to,
twain shall meet.
yeah, well,
Western
why shouldn't
classical
they
and
meet?
rock.
Why shouldn't they meet? So the journey, like with many symphonies, like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, which Carlo's conducting, it goes from a place of perhaps darkness in C minor, but ends in bright, blazing light in C major. And it's a little bit like that with the Shostakovich 10.
All right, we're very excited. The SOI Spring 2026 season is about to get underway. Not only because it is what it is, the launch of a brand new spring season, but also because the Symphony Orchestra of India now has a brand new chief conductor. No stranger to India, though. Martyn Brabbins has been here before and has an abiding friendship with Mr. Bisan Galiev as well as Mr. Khansantuk, who are such inseparable parts of the Symphony Orchestra of India. Wonderful to talk to you again. How have you been?
I've been very well, Hrishi. It's wonderful to be here and to see you and chat again. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, I'm going to start with the program on the 7th of February, 7 p.m. All of you are listening or watching. It's the Jamshed Baba Theatre. Tickets are live now at Book My Show as well as at the venue. It's Mussorgsky, Beethoven Symphony No. 1, and Holst. I'm going to ask you to start with Holst, who I believe is a personal favorite, Sir Brabbins.
Yes, I mean, Holst has always been very close to me. Like him, I was a trombone player, and I also composed a little bit. So I've always felt a warmth and empathy towards him as a composer. And I live very close to where Holst was born. So there are many connections. But The Planets is just the most extraordinary creation. It's written over 100 years ago, but still it's as fresh every time you play it as it was on the day it was written.
Yeah, and tell me a little more about this. A little birdie tells me that Pluto, the planet, wasn't invented around about the time Holst was writing this one. So,
Well, it was there, Rishi. It's just no one had found it.
no one
So
found
yeah,
it. Yes, I stand corrected. So,
yeah.
talk me through that. I mean, how does he explore the journey of, these astrological characters, these seven planets?
Yeah, I mean it's amazing, isn't it? He also didn't depict the Earth. So Pluto wasn't discovered. He didn't depict the Earth, but the other planets. So I mean, very famous, of course, is this rather terrifying first movement, Mars, the bringer of war. Which I've said before. I think every politician about to consider going into battle, into war, should listen to this music and just be terrified at the prospect of it. He goes through all the emotions. After war, we have peace. We're brought peace. Then we have Mercury, the winged messenger, who flies through the air. We have Jupiter, the bringer of jollity. We have old age, and in the end, we have the mystic, where the heavenly voices, offstage heavenly voices, take us somewhere very special. Who knows where? But Holst is able to really paint pictures unlike, I mean, better than most composers. And it's always a fascinating musical journey to go on. It's been a very interesting few days of rehearsal. The orchestra, of course, many of them played it perhaps 10 years ago when I was here. But for many of the musicians, if they're not based in the UK, where the Planets is played quite regularly, they probably won't have known this piece so well. So it's been a real journey to bring them all together. It's been very, very rewarding.
I'd also ask you, Martyn Brabbins, to talk about a female chorus, which I believe you're using off stage. What are they like? Have you seen them rehearse? We're very keen to know.
Yes, I met them a couple of days ago in the evening. There are 21
Wow.
women. They've been trained by Blossom, Bianca Mendoca's mother, and they've really worked hard. And I was so very pleased with what they'd achieved. And yes, they'll be off stage in the theatre, because the idea is that they are this celestial voice. They're not meant to be kind of there at the front of the picture, but there's something in the background, and we're really happy with what they've done.
Yeah, so what Martyn Brabbins is referring to is the Living Voices Choir, Mumbai, which Blossom Mendonça has so admirably trained. So there is a India connection to Holst, and I'll leave you to tell the story. It's of particular interest to all of us here in India.
He was a very interested composer. He was interested in many things: philosophy, language, travel. He traveled a a huge amount, and he was also interested and influenced by Sanskrit literature. He wrote a few pieces based on Sanskrit texts. He wrote a very beautiful and charming short opera called Savitri, which features three singers and a small orchestra and a female chorus. Again, a piece I think we should try and bring to the public here in the NCPA. But yes, he had a real fascination for things Indian, and who can blame him? It's a fascinating culture. It's wonderful to be here again, and it's just great to be able to bring Holst back to one of his spiritual homes.
How lovely. If you've noticed, I'm going in reverse order for no particular reason, just to throw in something in the mix. So I'm going to now come to Beethoven Symphony No. 1. I believe it, in essence, marked the beginning of a new era in symphonic music that must make it very, very significant. So your thoughts on Beethoven Symphony No. 1, please.
Mm. I mean, it is. We are beginning a cycle of the nine symphonies of Beethoven with
Yes.
with this performance. Over the next couple of years, we'll complete the whole cycle. Beethoven, I think it's fair to say, was probably the most radical composer that ever lived. Okay, there are many modernist composers who you might think they're very radical, but at the time of when Beethoven lived, when he wrote this piece in the early 19th century, he was breaking new territory. And with every symphony, he developed things further and changed and made the symphony into a completely different creature to the one that we know and love from Haydn and Mozart. Haydn was still writing when Beethoven wrote this first symphony. And, the fact is, the piece begins on a dissonant chord. It begins on a dominant seventh chord, which maybe the listeners won't know what that is, but they don't need to know. What they ought to understand is it was a very radical statement, a very radical gesture to begin a piece on a dissonance. It's incredible. But of course, now we're so used to this music that it's not as radical as it would have been then. But yes, he changed music probably more than anyone with his output, with the way he developed form, the way his language, his harmonic language, the complexity of his rhythmic language, everything was breaking at the seams. He was stretching everything in his music, and he's one of the greats, one of the composers you really can't ignore.
I find it quite fascinating that one of my favorite German rock and roll bands, a band called the Scorpions, and they are on an India tour in April, they've written a song which begins talking about the Moscow River, and it starts with Follow the Moskva. It's called The Winds of Change. And here we are in Western classical music, and Mussorgsky's done a very atmospheric depiction of the Moscow River. And
Yes,
the twain shall meet.
Yeah, well,
Western
why shouldn't
classical
they
rock.
meet? Why shouldn't they meet? Yes, Mussorgsky's this Dawn on the Moscow River. The piece is called. It's the prelude to one of his huge operas, Khavanshina. He's obviously very well known composer for both his operas, Boris Godunov being the other great piece. But he was also, again, he was something of a radical, this Mussorgsky. A lot of his contemporaries and the people that he died very young, Mussorgsky, and some composers like Rimsky-Korsakov and Shostakovich had a go at changing, kind of cleaning up, if you like, the strange music that Mussorgsky left behind. But we're playing the original version of this piece, and it's just amazing how he evokes the calm breadth of the river, the flowing stream, and the current of the river in the dawn light. So it's a very muted, gentle piece with a most glorious melody, which kind of Russian composers of the 19th century wrote some of the greatest melodies.
I was speaking to both Marat Bisangaliev as well as Bianca, and they were talking about how you've attained such mastery over operatic works. I, of course, have spoken to you before, so I know what a lovely narrator of stories, real-life stories, you are with your deep musical insight. It's such an honor for the Symphony Orchestra of India to have you as the chief conductor. Talk to me about how excited you are and your plans, if not for the distant future, at least for the immediate future, please, because it's a landmark year. The SOI turns 20.
It is a landmark year, and I'm delighted and privileged to have been asked to be chief conductor and starting my tenure this very week here in Mumbai. Of course, I've known Marat for many, many years. We go back to the early 1990s when I played with him. I conducted him in Almaty in Kazakhstan, and we've stayed colleagues all these years and friends. I came here 10 years ago for the first time. Marat had asked several times before, but I wasn't able to come. But finally, when I came, I just found I was so welcomed by everybody, and I found the orchestra so engaged and engaging with what we were trying to do that it's been a pleasure to come back 2 or 3 times since 2016, and now to begin this regular visit. I'll come twice a year for the next 3 years, and I hope we will be evolving the orchestra and taking it forward, both in terms of quality, which is definitely improving. The orchestra is becoming a real fantastically versatile and flexible ensemble. And also maybe we'll expand the repertoire a little bit, not too far, so that we don't scare our Mumbai audiences. We know how they like their comfortable classics, but I want them to also try to explore and hear some new music. Nothing radical, but some music, maybe some English music other than the Holst. We'll be doing some Elgar. Maybe we can bring some Vaughan Williams, and some of these pieces will definitely please everybody. They'll please the orchestra, they'll please the audience, and please me at the same time. And as we move together making this great music, the orchestra will evolve and develop, and we want to travel with the orchestra, we want to record with the orchestra, and just bring what we have here to a wider public. And we're really, really looking forward to everything here.
We're very excited also about Norman Lebrecht's talks as part of the spring season. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about him. I mean, he is an icon, isn't he? And renowned all over the world for what he does. And what is of particular interest to you that other people can peck off as far as his talks at the spring season is concerned?
I'm equally fascinated to go and hear Norman Lebrecht talk. I've never met Norman. Of course, I've read books that he's written. I've heard him speak on the radio. He does a series of interviews on BBC Radio 3, which are really fascinating, exploring music, musicians, and individual performers and so on. Norman has a very wide-ranging sympathy and knowledge of music and society. And I think this is what makes him rather a unique journalist, that he'll be able to put things into a broad context. I know he's talking about why should every city have an orchestra. He's also talking about Mahler, who was is probably the composer that he feels closest to. And both this concept of the orchestra in a city and what Mahler did to evolve the language of music are both going to be really fascinating talks to hear. And I'm looking forward to being there and meeting him myself.
And of course, Carlo Rizzi is here. He's another opera conductor who now conducts symphonic repertoire. A little bit about him, and you have a couple of fantastic singers who are coming in. If you could tell us about them, please.
Yes, I mean, Carlo has been before to the orchestra. He's a colleague of mine. We're sort of contemporaries. He spent a lot of, he lives in Wales, in the UK. He lives in Wales. He was Welsh National Opera chief conductor for many years. And bringing him back to the orchestra, I know is going to be a great pleasure for him and for the musicians. I'm particularly proud, looking forward to introducing Dame Sarah Connolly to our audiences. Sarah and I have worked together many times. We're friends, and it's going to be really special. I haven't done the songs of the Wayfarer with her, the Mahler song cycle that we're presenting, but I know she's going to really. She brings something really special to her performances. There's a personality and an intensity to what she does, which is really quite striking. And I think our audiences will really be enraptured by what Dame Sarah delivers.
You're also conducting another concert, Martyn Brabbins. If you could tell us about the second one, that'd be wonderful.
Well, that includes the Mahler song cycle with Sarah Connolly.
Uh-huh.
It opens with the wonderful overture, Calm Sea and Prosperous Voyage by Mendelssohn, which is really an orchestral tone poem. It's a real evocative piece of music, just like the Mussorgsky, which begins the first program. It really tells a story, it paints a picture. But the concert, for me, Shostakovich is a hugely important composer in my life. I spent 2 years studying in the Soviet Union in the 1980s. My teacher was a friend of Shostakovich. They were students together, so I feel a very strong personal connection. The 10th Symphony is one of my favorites and one of the great symphonies of the 20th century. It's a very dramatic work. It's also highly personal to Shostakovich. He weaves in this very famous theme, bam, bim, bam, bam, which these notes are taken from the letters of his name, the DSCH, Dmitri Shostakovich motto theme. So the piece is both overtly kind of strong and striking, possibly outwardly very impressive, but there also is a very deep internal drama and emotional response in this music. And that's what makes it so fascinating to perform, the balance of the public kind of music, the music making, and the private, sometimes very sad overtones we get with Shostakovich. So no problem. The piece ends in a huge blaze of glory. So the journey, like with many symphonies, like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, which Carlo's conducting, it goes from a place of perhaps darkness in C minor, but ends in bright, blazing light in C major. And it's a little bit like that with the Shostakovich 10. It begins in a very dark place in E minor, but the very conclusion is in a really splendid E major. And the music is so glorious at the end. I think the audiences will have a treat listening to this piece.
Just filling you in on that second one, it's 12th of February, 7 p.m. at the Jamshid Baba Theatre, where Martyn Brabbins conducts Mendelssohn, Mahler, Shostakovich, and Dame Sarah Connolly, the mezzo-soprano, shall also be performing with him. Tickets are live at Book My Show as well as at the venue. Please go get them right away. Thank you very, very much for your time, and see you very, very soon. And,
nice to see you, Hrishi.
Lovely to have you here as the chief conductor of the orchestra, and I'm sure that the orchestra is going to scale many more new mountains.
One world, your station.